And then the second one was a really literal interpretation of this design brief that we gave them. This team said, okay, well, we need a space for roosting and we need a space for food and water. So that's 2 boxes. And what is an interesting way to put these boxes together that would be structurally sound, but also really aesthetically cool? So they came up with this, this scheme where they had 2 boxes with this twisted run that would bridge them together. And as they were building this model, they were actually trying to get it to stand up this way with this like split level, you know, one down here and one up here. And then right after I took this picture, the model fell over and the cubes were sort of sitting on their corners. And they looked at it and went, well, that's way cooler. Let's just build it like that. And it was this great moment where, and I got to witness it, where I think 3 weeks prior, they probably would have seen that as a failure. But they were able to stop and look at it and think, oh, well, that's another way to do it, and maybe that's better. So that's how we ended up building this one. Very basic wood structure, and then this shiplap siding on the boxes. And you can see the twisted, that's a welded steel frame there. So again, basics of MIG welding. And then this sheathed, twisted run, we use these tobacco sticks from a local tobacco farmer. And then this is just the twisting run that goes between the 2. So this coop, they named this one Chicktopia, Chicken Utopia. And this went to the Byram family, who coincidentally live right across the street from the Parkers. So as you're going down Route 13, there's not a lot for many miles. And then all of a sudden, there's these 2 crazy chicken coops on the sides on both sides of the road. And then the third one, this is our Buckminster Fuller inspired chicken coop. So we had each of our students look at a precedent study of a great piece of architecture and what made it great, what made it stand up, what was it made out of, why was it a good response to the context, environmentally, socially, otherwise. And so this student had Buckminster Fuller and the geodesic domes and the Demaxian house, which are really great examples of geometric structures that are based on very simple geometries. And so the student made probably 30 of these really cool models where he had a flat piece of cardboard and he sliced it in different ways, and then it sort of twisted up into these rainbow-shaped arcs. And so the one that he really loved was this, and this is what he brought to us and said, this is the one I want to build. This started as a flat piece of chipboard, and then he cut it and sliced and twisted it up. And so Matt and I were like, oh, that's really cool, and it's very different from the other 2. But we don't know we have no idea how to build this one. This was not at all a straightforward construction process. But here's where the design process is really powerful, because this coop in particular, because we didn't know how to build it, but we knew we wanted it to mimic that same action of going from 2 dimensions to 3 and being a flexible piece that you could pop up. We did probably 6 or 7 rounds of prototyping of this flexible hinge in many different materials. How can you maximize the amount of material you're getting out of a 4x8 sheet of plywood? So we ended up with this sort of triangular, multifaceted Oreo cookie scenario where we had 2 pieces of plywood with a piece of sheet metal, and it could bend along those hinges. So, you know, having to try something and seeing it fail completely, and then going back into the studio and redesigning it, and then going back into the shop and building it. And this is the kind of process that I think design is really good at promoting. Okay, so we ended up with this flat piece that mimicked the model. And then we had a raise the roof day, and this took like the entire class to pick this thing up, and we're looking across the room at the model and going, okay, well, this needs to come down, and you push this that way and pull this that way, and you know, someone hand me a 2x4 so we can hold this thing up so it doesn't fall on us. And this took like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and eventually it started to look just like the model. And we went back into the steel shop and welded a frame. And then they used a rubberized roof paint to weatherize it. And then this was the final Bucky Fuller coop, which they named Coopus Maximus, and the team that built it. Okay, so I have a really quick little video here about the chicken coop project.
I think we have a lot of work to do, and we can get a lot accomplished today. All right, let's get to work. This is not just a piece of plywood or sheet metal. This is a chicken coop.
chicken coop that me, myself, and Karan designed.
It definitely doesn't feel like homework. I definitely feel like we're actually working to work and build something.
Well, here's my favorite parts. This is a perfect example of disobedience. Make sure you get this on camera.
This is like the make or break. They need to start looking like coops, like by the end of the day.
It's amazing.
I think the chickens are gonna love it because they have a giant run space.
You can have an ownership and a say in your own education. That, I think, is something that design offers. Okay. All right, so we finished the chicken coop project, and then we realized we now have to go from chicken architecture to people architecture. And we have 4 months to design a project for the community that we're going to build over the summer. So around the time that we started having a conversation about what to build and what would be a good and appropriate response to Bertie County, this crazy flood came through Windsor. And this was in October of 2010. And so coming off the heels of this flood and wanting to build something for the community, we're in this sort of weird, bittersweet position where we want to build back and we want to repair the damage of this flood, but we also know there's an opportunity to build back better. And so in talking to the mayor, who lives 2 doors down from us, and going to Rotary Club meetings and talking to the town councilman with our students as well, how can we contribute to the landscape of this town and at the same time be sensitive to the fact that we're in a process of rebuilding? So the thing that we kept hearing first from one of the town councilmen, and then from some of the families, and then from some of our students, and then from the mayor, was that there used to be a farmer's market, and it sort of fizzled. It wasn't well supported. So maybe if we could rebuild the farmer's market as an enterprise and then also give it a sort of legitimate home, it would be a much more successful entity within the community. And so this was a great architectural solution. Project H is a general contractor, but we also, with a construction crew of 17-year-olds, we have some limitations as to what we can do legally and physically. But the town gave us this site, and so from that red car to the ditch was our site. And this was, the site of the farmer's market. We were very lucky in that the 2 other buildings on site are the Roanoke Cache River Center and the Fish and Wildlife Building. And so the River Center stepped up and said, we would love to be a partner on this, and if we can start the market here on the same sort of campus, we'll take over the long-term management. So for our students, here's an opportunity not only to build something really big and with a serious presence in the community, but to work with other partners in the community, the River Center, the mayor, the town councilman. This was a diplomatic learning process for them with very real consequences and real opportunities for impact. So similar to the chicken coop, we started in the studio. There's a lot of sketch modeling. We did the precedent studies again. We looked very specifically at, actually we came here to Raleigh to look at the State Farmers Market to understand it as a building and where was it successful and where could we maybe do something a little different. These initial ideas were presented in a public exhibition to the whole town and anyone that wanted to come, the town councilman. This is my student Karan talking to a guy who runs the local B&B, and I love this. They stood there for like 45 minutes having a conversation, and I love this picture because I don't think these two had ever met or maybe ever would have met. But they were in the same room talking about a project that they both really wanted to happen. Okay, so then we go back into the studio, and this is where the physics, the real science, the material understanding becomes very real because we have to build this thing. It's in a flood zone. It's in a hurricane zone. We have to engineer it to 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Because it's in a flood zone, we have to build it at 3 feet above base flood elevation level, which means the deck height is up here, which means there are accessibility issues. We have to build a ramp. So there's all these really specific real-world challenges that now our students have to take their ideas and butt them up against and somehow make it work. And a very specific budget. I mean, we had to fit this within a pretty tight budget as well. So another round of iteration and development against those real-world constraints. And then we brought in some architects who are friends of ours based in Raleigh, some students and professors from NC State, and we talked through it, like what can we reasonably build over the summer with this construction crew and this budget and in this context. And the design that we decided on building was something like this. This is the final model, very much inspired by vernacular agricultural architecture. You see in Bertie County, there are a lot of these peanut trailer sheds, let's call them, with this kind of rhythm. There are 8 bays where you can pull in a peanut trailer. And so this is a very familiar archetype of a building, but we referred to it as vernacular sublime. It was familiar, but again, with that little extra twist. Okay, so we decided to build this. The last day of school rolls around. All of our students are super excited that it's summer, and I was like, what are you talking about? I'll see you on Monday at 7 a.m. We have 2,000 square feet of farmer's market to build. So this is one of the first days of the summer, and as this was happening, the farmer's market as an enterprise was set up on the porch of the River Center, so right around the corner from where we were building. And so people were coming on Saturdays to this temporary location and getting to see this building come out of the ground. So there's this great sort of spectacle to what we were doing, and seeing our students as the construction crew. I mean, this was really a student-driven project. So we dug and dug and dug and poured a ton, literally, probably more, of concrete for the foundation. And then this was the sort of skeleton of the building that we prefabricated in our shop and then disassembled, moved to the site, and then put back up, and then lifted into place with some very heavy-duty machinery. And then this was back to like carpentry 101. This is flashback to the cornhole boards, right? We had to custom fit all these floor joists. And so if I ask for 96 and 5/8, please don't bring me a 96 and a half. It has to be really dialed in.